Today's episode is being brought to you by Diesel Fuel Prints. Diesel Fuel has been printing my stickers for about 20 years now. He's been in the business since 1991, and he is the highest quality weatherproof stickers you can get anywhere. DieselFuelPrints.com has easy online ordering, and you can get a quote on any size and shape sticker you could possibly want. Full color printing, as well as black and white printing starting as low as $25 for 125 pieces. Shipping's always free, and you can check that out at dieselfuelprints.com. And at checkout, if you use the discount code AWP 2021, my listeners will get 10% off of their order. So yeah, check it out. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anyway Whatever podcast. I'm your host, Mike Fisher, and today's guest is Arabella Proffer. Arabella is an artist, painter, and her and her husband own and operate Elephant Stone Records since the early 2000s. Arabella came as a recommendation from Wendy Gadzuk, who was an artist guest on this show. And when Arabella reached out to be on, she let me know right up front that she has terminal cancer. And I wasn't sure at first what to make of that and how that could be, how I would deal with that in a conversation about, about art and things like that. And then it turns out that she's just such an amazing person, and she's such a spark in her that all my worries were quickly put to rest. And we conversate a little bit about her health issues. It takes me a little time to get warmed up to it because I wasn't sure how it was going to go. But she's very frank about, her career and what her life has been and where she's at right now with her diagnosis. This is a fantastic episode, and I hope people listen because she has some things to say about what it's like to be an artist coming to the end of their life and the things that you might want to pay attention to taking care of. Like your legacy and things like that. Crazy, interesting conversation. She is a chatterbox, and it was amazing to listen to her talk and tell her story. So I'll have links to all of her stuff down below. I'm sure a lot of people are already familiar with their work. She is a very accomplished artist, and you can always find the stuff for my podcast down below, the Patreon, where you can subscribe to help give a little cash to the show to keep it going. Merch, same thing. And let's get you to the episode with Arabella Proffer. Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's guest is Arabella Proffer. She is a painter and a amazing painter, by the way. And she just informed me she also has like a record label and all kinds of cool stuff. I was not familiar with Arabella until she contacted me to be on the show through our mutual friend and previous guest, Wendy Gadzuk. And so me and her have just been sitting here and talking for a few minutes and getting to know each other. And now I'm like super excited to sit and talk with you. Hi, Arabella. How are you?
Hi.
So from the outset, you contacted me and you said that you have been unwell and have terminal cancer. And I'm sorry to hear that because I fell in love with your work as soon as I looked at it. It's all of those things about like outsider, lowbrow, pop surrealist art that, that hit all those really good spots, and your portraits are absolutely beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I like your Echo and the Bunnyman poster.
Well, that's my husband's. But the Interpol thing is actually my friend Tara McPherson, and then we've got Niagara.
Me and Tara are very good friends.
Yeah, and then Singapore Slang, which are probably my most favorite current band. They're from Iceland.
Oh, I do not know them. I'll have to check them out.
If you love Jesus and Mary Chain with a little more nihilism,
that's right for me.
Yeah.
That works perfectly for me. I love Jesus and Mary Chain. And it's one of those weird things, like when I was You know, I'm 51 years old, 52 years old. So I grew up in the 80s, like punk rock scene, and all of those like post-punk bands like Jesus and Mary Chain and all of that stuff, I did not like at all at the time. And I've really in my, you know, as I've gotten older, I've learned to really love a lot of that stuff. And in particular, like the new wave of those bands.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah. There are. It's funny how that happened, like very suddenly. And I've gotten into some of those bands and some of this, like the dark synth, goth, whatever stuff. Yeah. Well, my husband got into the Jesus and Mary Chain in the 80s, and he always credits Psycho Candy with basically ruining his life because he was like a good boy, and then he became a bad boy after that album, you know. But no, they're super awesome, and like, yeah, like you kind of look back on those bands and you're like, oh, it was actually really good at the time, and we just didn't know it because, like, yeah, some of the new stuff today ain't so good, and I'm really tired of auto-tune.
Yeah,
waiting for that to sail.
I'm not exposed much to that type of stuff.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I know. Like, you know, there's like a couple of things that like my kids are, you know, between 27 and 32. And so they're still young enough to be into current things, you know, and, you know, there's a couple artists that my sons listen to that are like hip hop artists that have a little bit of the auto-tune stuff that are okay. You know, I'm definitely more Public Enemy and NWA era of hip hop, but yeah, like that all that neo dark wave stuff, like, you know, Drab Majesty and
yeah.
And
I've seen them twice. They played down the street from me at like the worst punk bar in all of Cleveland, and I couldn't believe they were playing there. It was amazing. So it was like right there.
That is amazing.
And we actually went and saw She Passed Away in San Diego when they did a U.S. tour.
I don't think I know them.
Oh, they're Turkish, and it's all in Turkish.
Wow.
But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. Listen, I listen to death metal. What they're saying is completely irrelevant to me in most music.
And then, like, I think it was, like before COVID, like 2018, I went to Scotland and England, and my friends were actually DJing a goth night in Newcastle. So we went to that, and I got introduced to like a whole bunch of new bands that way through them, and just, yeah. Yeah,
there's a lot of that stuff gets played in the kitchen when I'm making my breakfast every morning. Because I can't listen to just, you know, straight hardcore all the time. The weird band that I always hated forever, that I'm in love with now in the last few years, is the Pixies. Like, I did not like the Pixies at all, and yeah, that's like a new thing for me. Like,
I have the reverse. I love them and I loved them and I loved them. Now if I have to hear This Monkey's Gone to Heaven one more time,
that's like, such a good song. Because it's new
like,
to me.
How many times do I need to hear
it? That record, Doolittle, is like, I swear to God, I'm certain it's one of the best, like probably 10 records ever made by an American band ever. It's like, if you moved Where's My Mind off of Surfer Rosa onto Doolittle, I think you'd have an absolutely perfect record. I don't think you could make a better record than that. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the weird things that happened in my life and musically in the last like 3 or 4 years. And my wife just laughs at me because she's like a hardcore Pixies person. So, you know, we went right from my intro stuff right into talking about music. I wanted to talk about your art some. So you said you went to Cal Arts. So were you at Cal Arts as fine arts, or Cal Arts is traditionally known as an animation school?
Yes.
And did you go there for fine art or animation stuff, or what were you at Cal Arts for here in Southern California?
So I initially, like, even by the time I was in 7th grade, I wanted to go to film school. Like, I already knew I was going to go. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And
you've lived all over the place. I
already knew I was going to go to California for film school at one of 3 schools. And then I was kind of not into it as much. And so I did some time at Art Center College of Design. And then I went to Cal Arts, and I got my degree in fine art. I studied fine art. And the reason I did that instead of animation was because if you were a fine art major, you got a studio. But if you were an animation major, you only got a cubicle. And I was like, well, fuck that. I'm getting a studio. So I actually ended up taking more animation classes, and particularly experimental animation classes, which combine film, than I did of fine art stuff. And I mean, you know, it was different then. Back then, figurative art was really, really frowned upon. It was all about installation and video art. And video art I did some of, but I just wasn't really interested in it. So I was doing paintings basically like I still do, like these portraits. I mean, I have images of paintings I've done in high school. You know, it's the same subject matter. And I used to just get dragged for it in these critiques, just like every day, you know, like, why are you doing this? It's so played out. Like, do something new. My God, you know, figurative painting, and like painting's not new, and all this crap. But then in the meantime, when I did have little shows at Cal Arts, I would actually sell them off the walls to not only staff from other departments, but the administrative staff at Cal Arts. They're like, oh my God, something I actually want to buy, you know? And not a wetsuit that's made to fit a helicopter with a bunch of hair dryers around it, you know? Or like someone actually did they were a master's student, they just leaned a bunch of straws up against a wall, and that was their master's show. So
what year were you?
I was taking, oh, sorry.
What years were you at Cal Arts?
I was there from 96 to 2000.
Okay.
So yeah, figurative painting there was very frowned upon, and I was luckily, because of all the animation classes I took, I learned more about anatomy and things like that from the animation courses. But then I, you know, come across Juxtapose magazine, and that was the first time I felt validated that what I was doing wasn't just, oh, there's just illustration for children's books or whatever, you know, like I felt like, okay, this can be seen as like fine art at a gallery, you know, or like someone buys it and it's not just like, oh, look, it's a cute little postcard or something like that. So that was like, I had to finish Cal Arts out, you know, knowing that I had this like group there, and especially in Southern California, this group of people who did embrace this kind of art. And then after I graduated, I hooked up with Cannibal Flower and started doing group shows with them. Hooked up with Gen Art, started doing shows with them. So I was getting shows here and there, but it was just so funny. Like, you know, art school was like, no, don't do that. But then, of course, John Curran and all these the figurative artists start to become really big. And like now Cal Arts is like, yeah, we love figurative art. But it's like, I ended up working for an art gallery in Los Angeles. It was actually the oldest art gallery. My boss, I think, was 89 when I started. And that was really amazing way to learn about art history, actually, was through him, because he had everything.
What gallery was it?
That was Herbert Palmer Gallery, and they were on Melrose Avenue.
Yep.
So that was like a really good education. But again, it was like, you know, the whole like lowbrow, whatever you want to call it, pop surrealism was still being frowned upon. And so when I left Herbert Palmer, I remember interviewing at Michael Cohn Gallery, and they asked me during the interview, well, what kind of art do you like? And I started naming people, and Mark Ryden being one of them. And they were like, he literally said, well, that's nice and all, but that's really more illustration. Yeah, well, fast forward, how many years? 5 years, and he's selling Mark Ryden for almost $1 million. Go where the money goes, I guess.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. And it's a common topic on this podcast of artists come on and a couple things. A, what they studied in school isn't necessarily what they end up doing when they get done. It sounds like you did figurative study and ended up being that kind of a painter. So you are a rare bird on this show. But the other thing is like, I myself, my favorite type of art is, you know, lowbrow pop surrealism. And so I have a lot of guests on that do that kind of work. And there's a lot of the common thread is, you know, oh, that's illustration. That's not real art. You know what I mean? And it's like, that kind of stuff annoys the shit out of me, you know, and not just because I love that type of art, but you know, any art is art. And I don't like when it gets separated like that. It's frustrating.
So an interesting thing that happened to me was one of my teachers was Jules Engel, which if anyone wants to look him up, he was an amazing artist, illustrator, painter, filmmaker. He worked on a lot of original backgrounds for Disney movies like Bambi and stuff, but his personal work was very like constructivist almost, I want to say. And it was like this big deal because I had at one of my last shows at CalArts, I decided to do some abstracts just for fun, just because they came easy to me. Part of the reason I never did them is because they came easy to me. I was like, well, what's the point of doing something if I'm not learning as I go? But so I did these abstracts really quickly, and he bought one of them, and everyone was like, Joel Engel bought one of your paintings. And he did. He looked at me, and he points, and he goes, this. You should be doing more of this. Well, I don't like it when people tell me what to do. But in this case, I was a dumbass, and I should have listened to him because I only started doing abstracts again, 10 years ago? And everyone's like, oh, But then I actually read an interview with the painter Marilyn Minter, and she kind of pointed out, and I don't know why she's right. She said, if it comes easy to you, that's the thing you should be doing. And I'm like, but I want to learn and do hard things. But maybe she's right. The thing that comes easiest to you, you should do. And
I suffer from
style and technique.
I suffer from that too, where I'm like, if I'm not being challenged, I lose interest really, really fast. And
yes,
I got super into abstract stuff probably like 7 or 8 years ago, and got motivated to do some abstract painting because I'd never ever done it ever before. All of my stuff is very illustrative. It always has been, because I'm like skateboard graphics guy and rock poster guy, and everything is it's about the single image and trying to convey something with the very, very illustrative style. But I started doing abstract paintings, and like you said, like it came super easy. And my first thought was, well, if it's this easy, you're not doing it right. Like, first of all, this must not be quality work, right? Like people are going to look at this and be like, you know what I mean? Like he's either copying somebody. It just didn't seem like real. But then I sold every single one of the paintings, of the abstract paintings that I did. As I did them, people would be like, online, like I posted them, and people would like, and then I started getting commissions from like more money than I've ever been paid to make art in my entire life, to do these like really big abstracts for like, lawyers' homes and things like that. And I was like, yeah, what is happening right now in my life? That, but I enjoyed it. And then like, I kind of moved on to doing other stuff too. I love to paint.
I've educated myself enough to see, I know what is good abstraction and what is bad abstraction, but then it begs the question, like, is it just people aren't educated themselves and like anything abstract is good because it matches their couch, or they think, oh, it's in a gallery, so it must be good. It's like, well, or is it that I really am that good at it? Like, which is it?
Or conversely, do they think it's bad because it looks easy? That is my common experience with abstract, is other artists who don't paint abstract are like, well, that's bullshit. Like anybody could do that. And it's like, not if it's done really well. Right. Right. I was talking to an artist yesterday for an episode of the podcast, and we were talking about Rothko, and cause Mark Rothko is, if he's not my favorite artist of all time, he's in the top 3. And,
he's in my top 5. Yeah.
And like, just like, people see images like in a book or online or something, and they're like, oh, well, that's just like a big blue box with the, and it's like, until you've stood in front of a Rothko and it has changed your life, you can't understand what he was doing. You know what I mean? It's like, there's a lot of people are just like, my kids could paint that. And it's like, no, you need to go and you need to be in front of it. And it's like, it's such a huge, their pieces are huge. And so they almost stare you down from the wall.
Well, that's
and
his point.
Yeah.
So I used to teach and do tours at Cleveland Museum of Art, and there's a Rothko there, and I remember telling the students, you know, I'm like, so what do you feel when you look at it? Because it was like a really dark one. And they're like, I feel yucky. I feel gross. I feel depressed. And I'm like, that's what he wants you to think. That's what he wants you to feel. Yay. You know?
Yeah.
But it's true. Like you have to, I mean, I would love to go to that chapel of his one day.
That's in Houston. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to Jermaine Rogers, who lives in Houston, and he was like, yeah, dude, you got to get down here and go see that Rothko Chapel. And I'm like, yeah, shit. Once COVID's over, maybe I need to do a Texas run. I owe a bunch of friends in Austin a trip to see them anyway, so we'll see.
Cool.
So that's awesome that you kind of bucked the system at school and came out of it and were able to like get shows and stuff. Like, you know, in LA, that the lowbrow pop surrealism, it had a really long, good run of probably 15 or 20 years where it was the primary cool galleries, you know, the cool galleries. That was what you were going to see if you went into them. You were going to see that type of art. And it seems to be mostly gone now. Everything's
really?
Pretty much everything's all of those galleries, for the most part. Leleu's is still Leleu's, but most of those galleries went to dark art stuff. Which
like
just
even Mary Karanowski?
I'm not familiar with what they're doing right now, but like some of the big ones,
they show pretty yeah. I mean, she's got Camille Rose Garcia up right now, I think.
All right. Well, then fair enough. It just seems like Copro and a bunch of those other ones, like some of the other bigger ones are like just.
I know Copro did, yeah.
Dark art stuff, which is fun. I absolutely love that type of art myself. Anyway, I like, but the stuff like you were saying, like once I saw Juxtapose, like, you know, it was like, well, now this is all I care about doing. This is all I want to do is stuff that's like in Juxtapose. And I still have a subscription and they don't show any of that type of work in Juxtapose anymore. It's all fine art now.
Ever since they got bought out by Complex Media, it's like that's when I started getting the tequila ad pop-ups on the web, and then like just I mean, I don't mind the like good fine art stuff being in there too, but like I wanted to see what it had been, and like I just I can't remember the last time I was even on their website, let alone when my subscription lapsed. So
yeah, like 10 years ago, they just went full bore street art.
Yeah,
and that is not a form of art that I can appreciate anybody's creative output, but it was never something that I gravitated to. Like, you know, some of it, like Banksy stuff's interesting and stuff, but a lot of the street art stuff, I was just like, I don't know. Like it was a culture and like a scene that I wasn't ever a part of, so it didn't really speak to me so much. And then they went straight from the street art thing, like kind of into and you know, again, that's fine. Like I'm not the boss of anybody. You do whatever you want to do. But, you know, it's funny that you have a Tara McPherson poster, and that you know her. As I was looking at your work and I was like, oh, this reminds me a little bit of Tara stuff. Like it's coming from the same place.
Yeah, we've known each other since like 1996 or 7, you know.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart, and I know she's going through her own health stuff right now, and I would love to have her as a guest at some point if she's feeling better. But we chatted, and she's like, no, I'm not there yet. So hopefully she gets it together to feel better, you know, just in general in her life. You know, she's such a sweetheart, and it's, you know, it's hard to watch the people that you know are, you know, such good people struggle like that. And, you know, I know you are going through it a little bit right now. And when we were chatting, you had said like, yeah, like I want to talk a little bit about like artists need to make sure they have all their affairs in order because, you know, I'd imagine, you know, like you have a body of work that's going to live on forever. And, you know, there probably is some responsibility there to that.
Yeah, so I sold out of most of my inventory except for the pieces I kept for my family and friends. But luckily here in Cleveland, there is a organization called the Artists Archives of the Western Reserve, and their mission and their purpose is to catalog and archive artists' estates who have passed on. and they will do shows, like actual like exhibitions. And so they have not only several paintings of mine, but they also have a lot of ephemera of mine. Just like, you know, I did a painting of Lil Bub that was in a Lil Bub show, and then her owner bought it, and now it's like on the picture disc for the 7-inch for the Lil Bub box set, and like CD art I've done, and just like any press or any like books or, you know, anything that I've done that wasn't even like just a painting, like they have it all. So that's like really cool that there's an organization here that like that's their mission and purpose. So it doesn't just fall on my family to deal with all of that.
Well, I think that's good. I mean, it's good to hear that that kind of stuff exists, because it's like there isn't, you know, one of the unfortunate things about American culture is there's not a lot of resources for professional artists at all. On like healthcare, you know, things like what you're talking about. Like, I mean, if I was, I wouldn't even know. I wouldn't know what to do with all this stuff I've done and all this stuff I have. Is there a place like that in LA that does stuff like that?
Wonder,
I wouldn't even know. And that's part of the thing is like, there's a great deal of lack of resources for artists in this country, which is kind of crazy. It's crazy to me, you know?
Yeah. But they're great. And, man, yeah, like artists need to, like, you need to have something in writing about something, what you want done with your stuff, because you will get vultures. You know, your family, you think they're all great and they all get along now, but I have seen families turn on each other when this stuff happens. And like, you know, I don't think it's going to happen with my family, obviously, but like,
nobody ever does.
If your family's like that, you need to do something about it. You need to have something in writing where you want stuff. And I do have like a list of, I still have some work that's at certain galleries. So I have the location of all those in my will. You know, I have a list of people who are in charge of doling out artwork to family members and stuff. And, you know, it's like, so I don't know if you know the song Goodbye Horses by Q Lazarus. It was,
of course. Yeah, everybody knows
so that was actually written and performed by a good friend of mine named Bill Garvey.
Okay.
And, you know, he was practically homeless at one point when I first met him. And his best friend was letting him crash with her for like 2 years. But then he got on Rockstar Games. He got on, Grand Theft Auto. Used the song, and then Family Guy used the song. So then he started getting like tons of money. But in the meantime, he was really poor health. He had a bad heart. I had seen him go into a coma twice. He was in hospice, and then we would have hospice dance parties, and then he actually beat hospice.
Oh, nice.
He still did not have a will at this point. And I'm like, what the hell, man? Because he was so convinced he was going to live. He didn't need a will. And this is a problem with people, especially in America. Like, making a will means I'm going to die, and they don't want to do it. The thing is, you are going to die.
Yeah.
You're going to die. So just like get it over with. It can be just anything that you sign. Well, so in the meantime, his best friend and he were supposed to go to the bank to sign her on his BMI account. So as like kind of a thank you for taking care of me while I've been homeless this whole time, you know, and all this stuff. And then he died suddenly, and she got nothing. And his family, he had been estranged from, then descended upon his apartment, took apart they got in there and they took everything. And then now, you know, they get all the rights and they won't help reissue the stuff on vinyl. You know, they're like in charge of his estate, and like all these fans want to hear the recordings that he had that never got released. And they're like, oh, I don't know, maybe. But so this was just like a really red flag to me. Like, oh my God, if I don't do something, I'm going to end up like my family will end up like Bill. Like, you know, it's just, or, you know, even just like your arrangements, like what would you want? Because your family doesn't know, your friends don't know what you would have wanted. And they're just going to make it up, stressed out as they go along. You know, I have everything down to how I want my makeup to look in my casket. I also have what kind of casket I want. It's biodegradable. I also have what kind of headstone I want. I also have the phone number and the address of, you know, the undertaker, shall we say. Like, I have, my plot has been purchased. Yeah, all this stuff has been taken care of. Probably more so than any elderly person. But definitely have, for you artists out there, you need to have an inventory. That's where you start. Just do an inventory and go from there.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you are going to stress your family and friends out, because now they got to go through all your crap.
Oh.
They don't know what to do with your stuff. They don't know what's worth what, like, I mean, this family, like there was an $800 microphone and it turned out they pawned it for $60 because they didn't know. Like it's,
yeah.
Stuff like that.
If I don't go through my stuff and catalog it, my wife will resurrect me and kill me again if she has to go through it. Cause I collect, I'm like all of us artists, like I collect stuff and, and I have, I try to keep, I do a lot of album covers and t-shirts and stuff like that. And I try to get a copy of everything I do. I have
definitely do
bins. Yes. I have bins and bins of crap with my art on it.
Well, make a spreadsheet or even just a Word document and just catalog stuff. And if you have stuff that's worth money, put that in there, because you don't want someone just like eBaying your stuff for 99 cents or whatever it is. So.
Yeah. Well, none of the stuff with my work on it's worth anything, but but I have some old punk rock records that are worth a lot. So I have to make sure my wife knows about that. But my kids do, because my kids are also, my kids all get along with each other, so probably won't be a big deal. But
no, you think that.
I know. I don't want to put that stress on their relationship either.
I've seen families who got along, and then when someone dies and there's stuff to be inherited or stuff to be divvied up, I've seen them turn on each other. It's ugly. It gets ugly.
Yeah.
Definitely
I need to do it. Yeah.
Catalog it. Catalog everything.
Well, my first thought when I hear catalog everything, and then I think to myself that I need to do that, and then I visualize myself doing it, that my mind immediately goes, well, that's how you're finally going to put a book together of your stuff. Because everybody's like, dude, why don't you have a book? Dude, why don't you have a book? And I'm like, because I can't even imagine going through all my stuff and putting it together in a way. And then I have to work and make money way too many hours of my life to spend time it would take me a year if I worked on it full time to get all my stuff together.
Well, that's the thing though. You don't have to do all of it. So what I did honey, baby, if I can do this, you can do this. I was in the middle of chemo and radiation, and I managed to put together one of those books of stuff that I knew had maybe not been published in something or not been in a show, or maybe it was in a group show and not a lot of people saw it. So I made a book just for posterity. I was like, no one's seen this work. No one knows about this work. I need to put something together for posterity, something. And I just ended up self-publishing on MagCloud, I think, 70 plus paintings. So I didn't do everything that I had, but just, I cherry picked things. So you should definitely do that. And it doesn't have to be everything that you've done. If you can get to start small, pick 100 things.
Yeah,
I could things and do that.
I mean, I could do a book a complete book just of t-shirt designs and a complete book of just album cover art, and
that's what you should do then.
Yeah, I know. I should.
I did it between chemo and radiation. You got no excuse.
I know. Except for that, I got a mortgage that I got to pay.
Hey, I got a mortgage too.
I know. It's just such a massive. What's that?
I ain't got a job now either. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Oh, boy.
If I keep living. Living's expensive.
Yeah.
Why is it so expensive to be alive?
Yeah, I came across a meme not that long ago that was like a monkey laughing at a person. Like, you're the only creature on earth that pays to live. And it's like, oh, you know what? You're right. It's crazy. Especially if you live in Los Angeles, then it's a whole different level of expensive.
That's why I moved to Cleveland.
Yeah, my wife's in the film industry, so we're kind of stuck here. At least until she retires.
Hey, we got a lot of film going on here. I get people because I was in one movie once with Willem Dafoe. I played Stephen Dorff's mother in Hallucinations because they used my artwork, and then they bought my artwork, and then they were like, "Hey, you look cool. Let's make you do this in the movie." But I get like emails every day about like there's so many Netflix things shooting in Cleveland. It's crazy.
What film was that you were in?
It's called Tomorrow You're Gone.
That sounds vaguely familiar to me. I'm gonna look it up.
It was executed in a way that's a little strange, but it's definitely a trip. It's a trip. Yeah, I moved here in 2004. It's the longest I've lived in any city, and it's worked out really well. And it's, all the museums are free. There's lots of artist resources. We're the land of nonprofits. And I have a beautiful view of the lake on a 10th floor. And I won't say how much I paid for my condo, but you'll cry. And I won't say how much my studio was, but you'll cry. In an old car factory. And it's worked out really well. And especially I'm, a half-hour drive from Cleveland Clinic. So I kind of need to stay here for that, especially. So.
Yeah, I have some Ohio artist friends. And, for the same reason, they're like, yeah, what are you, crazy? I can fly to LA for shows.
Well, we flew to San Diego to see, she passed away. I mean, it helps my mom lives in the endpoint. But.
Yeah. That definitely doesn't hurt. So you were also saying that you guys have a record label. I need to know more about that.
Yeah, we started that in 2002 when we lived in Hollywood, and it's called Elephant Stone Records. And the main premise was we were really into 90s shoegaze and 60s psych revival kind of bands, a lot of psychedelia. So my husband was working at Dionysus Records as the head of PR there, and actually Lee Joseph, who's actually pretty well known in the Pop Surrealist realm too. He was like an artist agent for a while. He really helped us get Elephant Stone off the ground, like taught my husband quite a bit, taught me quite a bit. And yeah, we just did slow releases. We only did a couple 7-inches. The rest was all CD because at the time we were like, vinyl is too, it's the way the vinyl pressing, I won't go into it too much, has changed a lot. I mean, we have Gotta Groove Records here, which is great. But now they're backed up with record store day stuff from major labels.
Oh yeah.
Because there's so few places pressing.
Everything's
so we did a lot of
6 to 12 months. Everything's 6 to 12 months at every pressing plant everywhere. It's super crazy. But for me, I mean, I'm a album cover artist and enthusiast, and I never ever liked CDs because I think it just was a total rip-off to the cover art. And so I'm glad everything's back to vinyl. I do not mourn the CDs.
Really, and as a consumer, because the way the new vinyl is pressed and the cardboard they use is complete garbage, and yet they mark it up exponentially. It's not like it was in the 90s. Like you're buying a new LP that's $35 and like the spine cracks 3 days later, and like there's all this color and splatter art, but like it sounds terrible compared to black lacquer.
Sure.
But no, that was back. So that was back in the day when like your minimum order for vinyl was like really high, whereas today you can order like a very small amount. And that was not the case for a very long time. Those businesses, those distributors had to like change their business model. Sure. But so yeah, we started a record label right as downloading was really ramping up, and all well. But no, and CDs have been great though, because like we always price them low. You can travel with them, and now like CDs are actually coming back really big, especially with younger people. Yeah. But yeah, so we did a lot of 60s psych and 90s shoegaze. So we did some reissues from British bands, and then we had some new bands from the US and Canada. But we basically are just back catalog now. We don't accept new bands or anything like that.
Yeah.
We only signed one band from a demo, and that was like a total fluke. So yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody about that recently too, and they were like, yeah, like demos don't exist anymore. Like you send somebody a link to your site that has all your, your Bandcamp or whatever it is. And it's like, it's such a different world now, the way entertainment in general is distributed and consumed. And that has been a common topic lately too with, music people, is it's like we live in a time now where it's like you don't need a record label at all anymore. You really don't.
I tell bands that they don't need us anymore. Sometimes they will approach us to release stuff for them just to make it look more legit, and we will work out a deal with them that way. But, we used to pay every year to renew our barcode, which was quite a lot. And then we started noticing like a lot of places weren't even doing barcodes anymore. So we just let our barcode lapse. And like most people are selling that stuff at shows now, so it doesn't matter anyway. And
there's no record stores left.
No, I mean, it was nice because, for the longest time we had our stuff. If you lived out in the middle of nowhere and you went to Walmart or Best Buy, you had an Elephant Stone band in there. And we did a lot, but like most of our income, especially for the bands, they only really made money off TV and film and video game licensing. Yep. That's where the money was at, not actual sales. And like, I talked to bands who to me are really huge, like, oh my God, you're going to Japan all the time. And like, you're on MTV Sweden or whatever. And then like, they're crashing in my condo and they're like, yeah, the only way we came out ahead on this tour was because of the t-shirt sales. It sucks. It sucks for bands today. I mean, unless I think Arcade Fire is probably the last indie band that you could say like went major like that. Bands that you think are doing really well, I can guarantee you they've got a spouse supporting them, or dare I say trust fund.
Well, I mean, it's funny how when I'm doing this podcast and I have guests on, similar topics will pop up in little groups, kind of organically, and was literally just having this conversation on Monday with Esben from the stoner metal band Monolord, and they're a Swedish band, and we were talking about, and he's like, you toured the United States because you need to, but you're not gonna, it's not profitable in any way, And it's like, as a person who a big stretch of my career, probably from like 2006 to like 2015, was merch design for touring bands. And I worked for all the major merch companies, and I did merch for everyone from Paul McCartney down to the smallest tiny little, crust bands from, Scandinavia. And the amount you could get paid to do that work went sharply down in that 10 years. And the need for and the value of merchandise to bands and merch companies went the exact opposite direction, because that is how you make money as a band now, is by selling merch. You don't sell records to make money, and you
can't download a t-shirt.
Right. And so while the merch designers became way more essential, we took it hard in uncomfortable places. It was like, that's one of my passions for sure, is like, I love designing shirts and posters and album covers for bands. It's what I've always wanted to do with my art since I was a very small kid, and to have watched that be devalued to the point that it is now it's hard. That was a hard one for me. It's like, what do you do?
No, I mean, so there's a band, there's a couple of bands in China who were from Beijing. They did 2 US tours, and they crashed with me. And, these were, I think they had to be pretty wealthy kids in order to be able to get like the visas and everything. But there's this guy, and now I can't remember his name, but he's American, and he teaches at the University of Beijing. I think he teaches economics, and he is actually personally wealthy, and he's a philanthropist. And so he started like going out at night at Beijing, and he likes to go see punk bands and stuff. That's his thing. And he's like, there are no punk clubs. I will start a punk club, because he found some punk bands. And so he started a club, started a record label, paid for the studios, I think some of these bands who didn't have money for instruments, he would buy them instruments. And basically he was working as a non-for-profit record label, sending these bands to America, like paying for the Sprinter van, paying for, their visas, paying for, whatever else they needed. And then our friend who's also in the Brian Jonestown Massacre acted as their manager. A member of Singapore Sling actually was their driver. And but at the same time, again, they're actually getting money from this millionaire, whatever he is, to tour, but they're still trying to save money because they're like, yeah, we stayed at a motel 2 nights in a row, so we have to crash with a friend to offset it, So they would come stay here and and they still had their sleeping bags, had all their stuff, they were out camping, but but then they get in the Mercedes Benz Sprinter van,
Yeah, welcome to touring in the United States.
And so but the fact that this guy was basically acting as a philanthropist for these bands, because they wouldn't have been able to come to America otherwise. They wouldn't have gotten a good studio otherwise. So I don't know, is this all going to backlash one day, do you think, or is it going to just get worse?
It's just going to get worse. It's going to get worse. There's websites like Fiverr, where it's I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole, but you can go online and hire someone in another country that has, where a $50 day is a big day for them in their life. And they'll do work as good a quality as anybody else for, a fraction of the price. And that's what has happened. The internet, while it is amazing and it is created opportunities for all types of artists. You don't have to have an art agent anymore either, because you can just get your work seen. But at the same time, it's devalued music, it's devalued art, it's devalued graphic design to the point where, what do? I don't know. What I did was I just decided that I was going to do 10 different types of stuff. And, so I learned how to airbrush, and I do custom painted ice hockey goalie masks, and I still do graphic design work for bands. And I do 10 different things to make enough money to keep being an artist. I used to just be I primarily did merch, and that was and I did great. And then it was well, that's not happening, so, custom paint work has really helped me survive in the last 7 years, because that you can't really, offshore that like you can, So, I work for a couple toy companies, doing that type of stuff, and I do the goalie mask stuff, and, so that's what I decided to do. That was the only solution I could come up with, because it's you're not going to get $800 to design a t-shirt for Metallica anymore. It's not going to happen. You know what I mean? It used to, it doesn't now.
So speaking of solutions, so I, as a result of the chemo, and I won't go into all those fun side effects, I actually have not been able to paint in over a year.
Oh.
I have a lot of problems with my hands, in particular the dexterity, and especially my thumbs. And it just wasn't happening. And so I tried to reteach my hands how to draw, because I hadn't actually drawn in a long time. So I was doing these, I thought they were doodles, kind of portraits of women while I was watching Real Housewives, because what are you going to do while you're recovering from all this stuff for 2 months in winter during a pandemic, watch Real Housewives, and laugh and laugh on I'm on morphine 24 hours a day. So everything's funny to me. Also, when you're given a death sentence, everything's funny to you, especially people's really dumb problems. But so
especially
I was
those dumb housewife shows.
Yeah, and they were just little drawings, because I couldn't do the big ones because it was too physically hard. Even an 8x10, I couldn't do. And then my friends who run Revolution Gallery in Buffalo, New York, it's actually run by Craig La Rotunda. He's a dark artist. He came with his wife and they saw them, and I didn't think these things would leave my sketchbook, and they were like, we should do a show of these. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. And so I matted them and I framed them. They actually looked really nice. And I ended up doing over 55 of them.
Wow.
And now they're in a show at the gallery, and I think like a quarter or more have sold already. So,
wow. Well, congratulations. Yeah. That's amazing.
Thanks. But yeah, like I was like, kind of, it wasn't as bad as like, my left foot, like, again, I'm going to use my foot, but it was just like, I mean, I have problems just like holding small things now, and like my hands shake really bad. And I'm going to try to paint again at some point once I feel more better, I guess. Hopefully I can get better than where I'm at right now. But
well, now's the time to get back to doing the abstracts, right?
Yeah.
to come full circle on that.
Artists, people, like, I can't imagine ever just like stopping doing art. Like, you have to come up with a solution some way, somehow,
Yeah, it's not a choice for any of us who've decided this is what our life is. Like, it's not a choice. Like, I'm not gonna go sell cars all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of stuck, for better or for worse, doing what I do. And that is the common theme of artists on this podcast is we're all lifers and we're in it. It's not for the faint of heart, this life, that we do. And, sometimes you have to persevere through the hard parts of it and through the dark parts of it. And I am happy to hear that you're like, okay, what are my limitations? And then you just persevered through that with understanding what you could do and then doing that. Like, I love that stuff. Like, the indomitable spirit of art.
I didn't know how people would react to those drawings. Because, like, to me, I was like, I don't know. I was still even like questioning it until I saw them all hung. But then, like, I lost my voice over a 3-day art, because we had like a preview and an opening, and then like a goth dance party at the gallery like the next night. So it was like 3 days of talking to people. Like, I pretty much lost my voice, and everyone loved it. So I was like, oh, God, because I was like, I'm used to painting. Normally I'm a painter.
Yeah, that is a thing too, is like, I run into that with like my custom paint work, where I'm like, this is how I make money. It's not my voice. And so when people are like, oh, you're the goalie mask guy. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not that guy. I'm the punk rock album cover guy. Please stop.
Oh, well, that brings like and there's that whole problem now, where it's like, I agree with it to one point, but like personal branding, you can only be known for one style. And then I have so many styles. Yeah. I really do. I have at least 5 that I've like made objects with or sold or whatever. And like, I've now finally gotten over that bullshit, but like, yeah. Personal branding.
Sometimes it's about what you want to be doing as opposed to what you are doing. I think that's kind of where I was coming from with it. But no, I agree with you. And that's one of the things that, as much as it was my choice to branch out into 10 different things, it's also how I've always been. Like, I don't want, like, if I went to animation school and I never really went into the animation industry. I went into video games but like, looking back, like, I don't know that I would have been a successful animator, because I don't know that like, you put me on a show like The Simpsons and I'm going to fucking pull my hair out. I'm going to be bored inside of 6 months. And
so I took the Simpsons test. Did you ever take it?
No, I didn't.
It was something. It came in the mail. It was like, 1.5 inches thick. And if you ever thought that you were good at animation, take that Simpsons test, because wow, I was like, by like halfway, or not even like a quarter of the way through, I was like, I give up. This is like, oh my goodness. And they were like showing other people's submissions of how they did it wrong. And they're like, don't do it like this guy did, or this idiot did this, and look at this perspective on Bart's spikes on his head. who does it like that? You know, it was just like really, yeah, I had the same experience where it's like, I loved seeing my art move, but I just wasn't that good at it. And it's really time consuming.
It is. And I think it's also like to speak to that exact same thing. It's also why I never got into tattooing. Because there was some time where I was like, well, I probably need to learn how to tattoo because that's a job I'll be able to do forever, you know? and I was like, oh, I just don't know that I could sit in that chair and do that over and over and over again. Like, because I think it's rare. It's more rare that you are doing original work than like, you know, tattooing fucking Tasmanian devil on someone's ankle. You know what I mean? Like the seventh time I had to paint Tweety Bird or, you know, tattoo Tweety Bird, I would shoot myself in the face. So that was actually the reason.
James Jean tattoos. So there.
Oh, there you go.
And my guy was so happy. He was like, I love James Jean. I'm so glad I'm doing this. But I'm a rarity, I'm sure. He lives in New Orleans. So it's all like pictures of Tweety Bird, yeah.
I'm sure nowadays tattooing has become such a massive part of our culture that it is probably now more easy to be a tattoo artist who does a lot of original work. But I have a friend who is a world-class, award-winning tattoo artist. And, you know, we talk quite a bit, you know, and he's like, yeah, man, I still fucking have to do that bullshit, you know? Like I still have to do those bullshit tattoos on bullshit people. And he's like, it just takes a little piece of my soul every time I have to do it. I'm like, well, I'm glad I decided not to do that. You know what I mean? Like, but you know, however people decide to make a living with their creativity, I'm okay with it. And I don't judge. I have nothing but respect for tattoo artists and anybody who has made the commitment that we were talking about before to a creative life. It's like whether you're a musician or an author or a painter or a tattoo artist or an illustrator or whatever it is, like, you know, I have nothing but respect, you know, and even the younger people who are able to do it like on Instagram, you know, like awesome. Like as long as you're doing it and you've found a way to keep doing it, I'll never judge. I might squint and be annoyed at how some of the new people are able to get it done online, but it's just professional jealousy, and we all suffer from that as creatives too, where it's like, why not me? You know what I mean? Like, and that's fine. That's just part of being a human being, you know? And it's like, I don't know.
Oh, I've never met any more competitive people in the creative field than poets. Oh, they're vicious. My God, they're jealous of everyone and every little thing. Poetry, my goodness. I thought it was bad in the art world and music world, but man, poetry.
I know two poets. Like when you said that, immediately I was like, holy shit, I know two poets. Because I was thinking, is poetry still a thing even? And then I was like, you know two poets, dummy. And they're both very, very, very good. My friend, I have a friend, Kirk, who put out a poetry book that did very, very well. But I mean, he's a graphic designer, so I don't consider him necessarily to be he's not a full-time poet. But yeah, I can see that because it seems like there's probably not a shitload of space in the poetry world.
Well, my sister-in-law is a very famous one. Her name is Larissa Sporlook. She's got like fangirls who turn up at her thing. She's been invited to the White House. She gets invited to speak in Europe and stuff. But like, even she's like, you know, she teaches at Bowling Green, and she's like, oh man, I got to go into my class full of master's students and kind of like make them believe they have a future in this, kind of, you know. And then my godfather was Joseph Brodsky. He won the Nobel Prize for poetry, and like, it's so weird to me. There's like a museum dedicated to him, and like statues in Russia. To me, he's still just Joseph. They like preserved his room, you know, like all this crazy stuff. But like, even he was petty and like professionally jealous, and she is too. Like, and I know I won't name some of the other ones. I know here in Ohio there are a few, and they are petty and jealous too. Like when it comes to like, what do you mean they got that grant? What do you mean they got that residency? Well, I'm going to apply for that residency next. You know, it's just, it's funny, but They're a good poet, though, by the way, if they're a terrible driver.
Is that the correlation?
Driver, there is a correlation. If they're a good driver, question how good their poetry is. That's what I've been told.
Well, I've never driven with either of my two poet friends, so I don't know.
The ones I know, at least, it's true. So
that's amazing that your life and your family and all of the people who surround you have such a full artist's life. That's amazing, and not a lot of us have that opportunity to come from a family and community of that many creative people. That's awesome.
I was very lucky in that, both my parents were professors and they ran a Russian literature publishing company, and they, would smuggle stuff back into the Soviet Union. And there's documentaries being made right now about our family actually in Russia, not in America, because they're more famous in Russia, even though they're American. But their worst nightmare was that one of their children would become an accountant or like a regional sales rep at some retail store. Like they were just, when I turned 4, I think it was proclaimed that I was going to be an artist. And they were just like, yes, that's what she's going to do. If she's not like a curator in a museum, like that was their, it wasn't sports. It wasn't, I want her to be a doctor or a lawyer. And they weren't afraid of me being a stripper. They were afraid of me being an accountant. So, but I was very lucky. Like I got to travel a lot. I got to see art. My parents collected art. I met artists. Like my first art opening, I was 5 years old, and it was in New York City. And I'm still friends with that artist to this day. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
So I remember I had an art opening once actually, and a woman she kept apologizing to me because she brought her toddler with her. And like, she kept making a big deal out of it. Like, I'm so sorry I brought my toddler. And I was like, no, that's great. You should bring your toddler to these things. Like she might, I remember going to these, like, it was really cool. Like you shouldn't act like you can't bring small children to an art opening,
Yeah. I came from a family. The fortunate part of my upbringing was that I came from a family, not necessarily of creatives, but of every possible demographic, from like total hippies to total Christians to Mormons to trans to LGBTQ to Republicans to rich to like everybody in my family has like a different demographic that they fit into. And so just being able to learn how to love and accept people, all people, was the most important thing that I learned from my family, because you couldn't do it any other way, because literally everybody was like we cops, and we had, heroin addicts, and like every possible thing in between. And so I was very fortunate that I learned to not judge people by any criteria other than what type of person they were. And so, both of my parents were amateur artists that had the skills to have been professional artists if they had decided to do that. But they were kind of from that generation of, well, that's not a practical way to make a living. You know what I mean? And so, neither of them really did. My dad was like a pinstriper. It's where I got my love of lowbrow art. Is my dad was cool. Like super into like Rat Fink stuff and like Ed Roth. And like, that was my first art memories, were going to art shows and seeing all of that type of stuff when I was a little kid. And
that's super cool.
Yeah. I mean, one of my parents, my mom is a painter. She does like kind of crafty stuff, on wood figures and stuff like that. And they're both very proud of the fact that I'm dedicated my life to being an artist, because I think they knew there was no option for me otherwise. But in the right before the pandemic, I became a official licensed Rat Fink artist.
Nice.
And I can actually make Rat Fink and Ed Roth art, legally. And so I think maybe that was like my dad was like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he could appreciate like all the work I've done for all these bands and all this crazy stuff I've done. But that one was something that he could actually really, it was his thing. And he was like super stoked. And then the pandemic happened and I haven't really been able to do much with that distinction, but I need to now that things are starting to get back to life.
Yeah. It's like, it's so weird. And like, especially in my situation, just because I don't know what's going on with me, but like, I'm trying, like people have asked, hey, do you want to be in the show? Or like, oh, maybe you should apply for that residency. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be around in 7 months. Like, do I do that? Like, do I try to plan for the future? Like, right now, like my husband and I can't think more than a month ahead, you know, and right now my priority is, despite I'm triple vaxxed, thankfully, but like my priority is travel. Certain places I can't go, but like I just want to see or go back to as many countries as I can before my end, you know, and like that's my priority right now. But it sucks because like, yeah, like I've been invited to some things and I'm like, well, I guess maybe I could make a thing for that, but I don't like with my hands and everything, it's a problem and just yeah. And yeah, with the pandemic, like we don't know, like all these, you know, people are making it take a lot longer for it to end, you know, like just but I am very into medical humanities and I've done a lot of painting series about it. My friend, she used to be the curator at the medical museum in Cleveland, and she has studied all of the plagues, like all of them, and they all go the same way. She said, you lose a third of the population and then it just stops.
Yeah.
Every time.
I listened to a podcast, the thing that got me into listening to podcasts and eventually got me into making my own. It's called Last Podcast on the Left. And they cover true crime stuff, serial killers, paranormal stuff, all kinds of stuff like that. And they're like it's all comedically based. And the way that they are able to balance horrifying things at the same time as being funny and not disrespectful is a thing of genius, but it is an acquired taste, that show. But they did like a 4-part series on the Black Plague. And so they dug way deep down into it. And it was like, I was sitting here and working and listening to it. And I was like, this is all very familiar. This all sounds like very, very familiar. Yeah. So like, I can imagine that, you know, that virologists and, you know, people who are studying these things are like, yeah, well, here we are once again.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks. Like I'm at Cleveland Clinic and, you know, I will hear people in the waiting room who've come from near and far and they're like, you know, it's always a man actually. They're always like complaining about having to wear a mask in there. I'm like, really? Wow. Okay. You know, it's just amazing to me, but those are the people that are keeping it going. So hopefully it'll just peter out, which I think it will. All these other new variants after Delta, they're really kind of like not anything to worry about. So,
well, I mean, first of all, you said you were surprised. I'm no longer surprised by anybody who does anything anymore. Like, I wish I was like shocked and appalled at other people's behavior, but I'm so far past. It's just, I expect the worst. I just expect the worst out of almost everybody anymore. And, like, I just can't be shocked and appalled after the last 5 years of this country. Actually, I would say even the last decade has just been like, it's just, I still love people and I still understand that everybody's just doing their best that they can, but I'm not surprised or shocked by people's behavior anymore. And then also, to speak a little bit to the variants, I mean, I don't know anything about what I'm talking about other than what I've read. And I read a lot of stuff about everything. I'm a voracious reader of information. But I suspect one of the variants may very well end up affecting primarily children. And then that's going to change. It's going to change things. You know what I mean? Like this one affects more children. At some point, 2 down, maybe it doesn't affect anybody over 65 and it goes just, you know what I mean? It's like the door is open. We're leaving the door open for that to be a possibility. And that's going to be a fucking shame if that's where we find ourselves, you know. Don't want to talk too much about it because it's, you know, like I always say, like the show is very low politics, but you know, what are you going to do? That's, you know, it's everybody's daily reality. And for people like you, that's fucking life and death, man. It's not a little thing, you know, like you're trying to squeeze out as much as you can at this point.
And the pandemic is part of the reason I did not go to the hospital sooner, because I thought I was getting fat from sitting around and like not doing anything all like the winter and the spring. And then I thought my back was hurting because I, again, was like not exercising, sitting around, not doing anything. And then, of course, you know, the last thing you want to do during a pandemic is go to the emergency room.
Right.
And, you know, turned out I had all these tumors growing in my abdomen and my back and like everywhere. But when I went to the emergency room, no one was there, not a soul. I was like, hi. And they're like, hello, welcome, come this way. I was like, I need a CT scan. They're like, right this way, madam. You know, it was like, oh, cool. I don't have to wait.
VIP treatment at the Cleveland ER. I love it.
Yeah, I don't have to be a Saudi princess for it either. Wow.
Is that where this starts?
There. And sometimes I get to sit next to them, like in the X-ray waiting areas and stuff, and we'll like compare like they don't speak English, but we'll like, you know, hand gesture like, oh, I like your shoes. Oh, I like your nail color or whatever.
Is that a thing? Like the Saudi royals go to Ohio for their medical treatment?
They come to Cleveland Clinic all the time. They will take entire floors because, you know, the women have to be separated. They will take entire floors at the hotel that's attached. And then like sometimes I will see like someone in like, especially in their native, like the United Arab Emirates, like they'll be walking on the beach or like, you know, you see them in a store or whatever. But yeah, like a lot of celebrities go there. So, you know, Saudi royalty, who knew?
Well, at least you're adjacent to that. That's, you know, that's got to be at least somewhat hopeful for you that, you know, at least you're getting as good a treatment as you possibly can. Yeah. Are you getting any treatment at this point or are you past that?
No. I would get more radiation possibly if things get ugly. But right now it's like, I mean, they gave me so much. I'm like blessed. So they have to be really careful. And then the amount of radiation they gave me, if they gave me any more of that particular drug, it would kill me. So the fact that I even survived those rounds is kind of amazing. So they said, well, you know, we could do light chemo. But other than that, I'm basically waiting to see if there's a clinical trial for someone like me, because it's very, you know, you have to be in a certain age bracket. You have to have had chemo fail. You've had to have like all these factors involved for you to even qualify for the trials. So right now I'm basically just waiting for something.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'd imagine trying to get into clinical trials has got to be like the lottery, right? Like
my dad won that lottery when he went to NIH. They were looking for someone in his age group who hadn't had chemo yet, and they, you know, at Bethesda, like they pay for everything. They pay for your housing, they pay for your food, they pay for all the treatment.
Oh wow!
With the understanding you're a guinea pig, but it always works, and they push everything as far as they can push it. So hopefully, you know, they'll come up with some kind of trial that they need for someone like me. Already, like my syndrome is like, you know, it might end up being named Proffer syndrome because it's like such a rare genetic disorder, and like everyone on my dad's side of the family, we've all had it. So,
oh wow!
But I'm the first where it mutated. So, I'm in a few medical journals. So,
wow, that is, yeah. I mean, the fact that it's a genetic thing, man, that's got to be kind of weird.
But
like,
you know what?
It's almost no way to escape it at that point. It's like,
yeah, I mean,
it's got to be a head fuck.
You can do tests now, actually, that you couldn't do before. So my niece was going to take the test, and my brothers, one of my brothers actually did have something removed. So you can actually take tests with, they're called genetic counselors, and they discover new syndromes all the time. So if you ever like have cancer run in your family, you can go get one of those tests, especially for someone that you're afraid like might develop it later. Like, cause I got my cancer the first time when I was 31, so, and in my syndrome case, it's like the younger generation, every generation. So the next, like if I had a child, for instance, she might get it when she's 21. So,
yeah, I'm super fortunate that like only one person in my direct bloodline that I'm aware of ever has died from cancer. And it was my aunt, and she had ovarian cancer and, didn't know. And so it wasn't even a genetic thing.
It was just random.
Yeah. People die of alcoholism in my family.
Oh, fun.
that's our cancer.
No, but I mean, I was told recently I had my third scan. Nothing has changed. I'm kind of just like existing with these things floating in me. I call them my gremlins because that's what they feel like. I can actually feel them like moving around and stuff.
That's odd.
They said, well, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. And I didn't want to say, you mean eating ice cream and getting high every day? I smoke so much pot now. I never used to smoke pot. Like when in high school and college, I didn't smoke pot. I think I did like maybe 3 times in my 20s. And like now I'm just like, what time is it? Oh, it's 2:00. Time to start vaping.
Anybody who judges you for that is a fucking asshole.
Yeah. No, and then it was funny because then I'm under palliative care. Like I'm under like hospice care right now. And my pain management specialist was like, well, we have this drug and it's actually derived from marijuana. And I wanted to be like, can't I just check the marijuana? Like, I'm already taking it.
Is Ohio a legal state now for marijuana?
So it is for medical, but the amount that you're allowed to buy is very small. And it's recreational in Michigan, so we all drive into Michigan. But it's really weird because we have a cannabis college here where you can get an associate's degree in like medical marijuana or growing or whatever. And our governor is very anti-marijuana, so it'll be a while. It was on the ballot at one point. It wasn't on the ballot last year, but not like it's hard to get.
Yeah, well,
really isn't.
That's like when they made medical legal in California. It was like, well, they might as well just made it legal. I mean, it was like the amount of effort you had to go through to get a prescription was saying it was laughable is an understatement for how easy it was to get a medical marijuana card. It was like, if you went down to Venice Beach, you could walk up to this particular office and be like, hey, I need a card. And they'd be like, well, what's going on? Can't sleep. All right, here you go. It was like literally anything you told them, they were going to give you a medical card for. So it was, hopefully Ohio. I mean, it just needs to be reversed federally. I have smoked marijuana like 5 times in my life. I do not like that particular head change. So it's not my thing, but the idea that it's illegal that's one of the most absurd things.
It seriously replaces 3 of my drugs, like 3 drugs that they gave me for all these things. I'm like, I can just take a gummy and it does the thing that those 3 things do. It's so stupid. And like, if it wasn't for that, for like my husband and me, like, I don't know what I would do. I wouldn't be able to sleep, first of all, ever, if it wasn't for that. But no, it's funny. Like when I go to MedMen, because I'm like a member, or like this one place in Palm Springs, they're like, "Welcome back, Mrs. Proffer." I'm like, "Hey, thank you." I feel like the customer service at dispensaries is like way better than like say, I don't know, well, pretty much anything. So like it's like I love just going and shopping.
Yeah, I was having some insomnia issues during the pandemic because I was like fucking stressed the fuck out about it. I mean, I suffer from obsessive compulsive disorder, so I'm a germaphobe to begin with, and it set me back a lot of years in my OCD treatment, let's put it that way. But so we went into a dispensary here, and I was like, I think I need the lowest possible dose because there's an effect that THC has on my body that makes me feel like I'm being electrified, and it's extremely uncomfortable. And so
okay.
that's why I never liked it. And so I was like, if I get like just the smallest dose, like I won't have that. Help me go to sleep, whatever. And it was like, I swear, I told them, what is the lowest dose gummies that you have? And they gave them to me. And then I took like a quarter of one of those, and same effect. I was like, fuck.
I think that means you're allergic.
I'm allergic to every single type of plant, pollen, dust, and animal hair. So of course I'm allergic to cannabis.
Yeah. Because I know a few people who are allergic to it, and they have like similar experiences. So I think that just means you're allergic.
I
unfortunately.
have no doubt. Well, I was tested for allergies when I was like 17, and it was like I was like literally allergic to like every fucking thing on earth that you could be allergic to. And then one of the weird things that happened was, and it's a thing that happens to some people who suffer from like allergies when they're young, is when you become an adult, your body chemistry changes and your body starts confusing proteins in fruits and vegetables for pollen. And so now I don't have a lot of hay fever symptoms, but I can't eat any uncooked fruit or vegetables without having some level of allergic reaction, ranging from like, my throat's itchy, down to like, if you peel an orange around me, like I'm headed to the ER room, it's
oh my God.
Yeah. So there are certain things like I love berries of all kinds, and they give me a very low effect. So I just eat whatever I possibly can. But like, if I get a raw onion, I'm screwed. And so, but everything that if you cook anything, it modifies that protein, and my body's like, oh, okay, it's fine. So I just have to, like, I can have pasteurized orange juice, but I cannot have unpasteurized orange juice. It's so ridiculous. It's like a ridiculous thing, and people think I'm making it up. And I'm not. It's a real thing. It's called oral allergy syndrome.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, that, and not only that, but I'm also what is called a super taster. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
There's like a
That sounds like a porn title.
It sounds like a porn job.
Yeah.
We bring in the super taster. But there's a certain percentage of the population that has an extreme sensitivity to bitterness. So like all of my life, like I couldn't eat celery, and my mom would be like, it doesn't taste like anything, or like iceberg lettuce. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. It's like raw onions. And she's like, you're making it up. And people always thought I was making up this stuff. And then like I got diagnosed with all of it, and I was like, ha, I told you.
Well, you weren't missing anything, because they really do taste like nothing. They're empty calories.
Yeah. Like celery, like to me, it's like if you cut celery and I eat it, like I will have a severe, if I cut celery, it's like cutting raw onions. Like I tear up. I can't, it's madness. Like my wife's family, when I first started, going to their house, and I'm like the designated chef there. Like I cook everything while I'm there, because I like to cook and I'm good at it. But they just thought I was like totally making everything up. They're like, there's no way that you're telling us the truth, that you're allergic to all this stuff, or that like celery. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Somebody else has to cut the celery for the Christmas dressing. But my wife helps. So.
Oh man.
Weird. Human physiology is a fucking strange thing, as I'm sure you're quite aware at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that you're going through that. You seem to be in very good spirits. I mean, I'm sure you've had time to process to a certain extent, and it has been a pleasure to talk to you. I wasn't sure when you reached out. I wasn't sure. I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I don't know how that's even going to go. Like a conversation with somebody who's terminally ill. Like I was very happy that you did. And now that we've actually sat and talked, I'm even more happy that I've gotten to know you and then I've been able to like learn more about your art, and now I have that in my sphere, and you do work that in the genre that I like, and you've done a lot of cool stuff, and I always, my favorite people in life are the ones who have spent their time doing cool stuff. And so, I appreciate you reaching out and being a guest.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I feel like, like I said, I'm on morphine 24/7. So it's kind of my new baseline. And I joke to my husband, I have more energy now than like people who are on drugs all the time, but I don't know. I guess I'm just really good at compartmentalizing, or the fact that like I just have to power through stuff as usual. But I don't know. All I can part with telling listeners, as someone who's gone through this twice now, is like, don't waste your time and leave the damn house. Leave the house. Go to that gig. Go to that dinner. Go to that party. Go on that date, because you will be glad you did. Like, I've never regretted leaving the house last minute to go do something where I'm like, oh, I'm tired and I don't feel like it. And then I'm like, maybe I'll go out. And like you never know what's going to happen. And people are always like, why do you have so many crazy stories about stuff that happens to you? And I say, because I leave the house. That way things happen to me. So that's my parting words for everyone is please, 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 after this pandemic is over, go leave the house. I mean, have you had enough of Netflix at this point? Please, come on. Like, I know you're an introvert, but come on, like power through it just a little bit, That is solid advice. And that's the vow that me and my wife made during the COVID thing, was like, when this is all done, we're going to stop finding excuses not to go do stuff. We're going to go do stuff. And so I agree with you. My first regret, the first time I got diagnosed, the very first thing I thought about was when my husband joked about cashing out the retirement fund to go follow Motorhead and the Damned on their European tour, staying at a 5-star hotel every night and ending in Russia. And that was my first thought, was we should have done that. So that's why now I am concentrating on, even though there's a pandemic right now and I'm traveling where I can within the US and stuff, but like, once everything's cleared up, if I'm still alive, baby, I'm going back to Morocco. I'm going to Italy. I'm going to Greece. I'm going to Scotland. I'm going to South America. I'm going everywhere. Like, you can't stop me. So please, everyone, go leave the house and do the things that you really want to do. Because, I mean, no interesting story ever starts with, it was a school night, so I went to bed early, like, oh, I have to get up early for work. Like, are you going to remember the time you got up early for work and you got that spreadsheet done fast? Or are you going to remember the crazy band that you saw, and like you ended up partying with the lead singer or something like that, which, you never know.
That is all very solid advice. And I wish more people would live their life that way. Without the severe need to do it right now. But
yes,
Arabella, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate your time. It's precious to you right now. So thank you very much for reaching out. And thank you for being a guest. I will be in touch with you about when the episode is going to be out, but it'll be out very, very soon. So we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you very much. And, from both of us to Wendy. Thanks for the recommend. And hey, Wendy, what's up? Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Bye.